What's going on, Governor? It's Chisgule here, and today we're talking about the much-awaited, much-anticipated Commander Guide for Eulji Mundeok. If you are into Commander Guides, you should totally like and subscribe, because we're going to cook those up for all of the commanders in this game. And when the new commanders come out, which should be any day now, we are going to put together guides for all of those commanders as well. So please do like and subscribe, and we are a sponsored creator for Rise of Civilizations. So with that said, when we do a commander guide, there's 4 things we like to cover, and those 4 things are very important. First, we review the skills in depth. Yes, we read them, because even when I paraphrase, I get things wrong. So let's make sure we understand these skills completely, because they inform how you use this commander and what talents you might choose. Talents is the second topic. Then we'll review how you actually get this commander. And finally, we'll talk about possibly my favorite part, which is the pairings. Who do you put Eulji Mundeok with to completely smash your enemies? So with that said, let's get to reading. The first skill is the active skill. It's a water attack. Attacks the target and deals massive damage, damage factor max of 750, decreases the defense of the target by a max of 30% for 2 seconds. When do I think that this is particularly strong? I think this is really strong if you have a lot of armies hitting the same target. If you have a lot of armies hitting the same target, then they are going to be weak, and this defense reduction will get max value. Next up is Cold Welcome. Increase garrison defense by a max of 5% when this commander is serving as the garrison commander. Next up, increases the infantry attack by 10% and the defense of infantry units by 10%. The next skill, and I think this is really interesting for open field combat, when attacked, Eulji Mundeok has a 10% chance to increase his troops' damage by an upwards of 100% on the next turn. To me, this says that if you put Eulji Mundeok in a somewhat tanky unit, maybe have them in a combat where they are making targets weak and your allies are all hitting that target, you could do really, really well, and if people attack you, they're going to get punished for it. Next up is the expertise skill, obtainable only when you max all the other skills, and that elevates the infantry attack and defense boost by a solid 5%. Overall, these skills tell me that this is a garrison commander who can also do good stuff in the open field, and although they don't have a ton of mobility, they can make a target weak and punish you if people attack your army. So with that said, there are 3 different trees we can look at for talents. Garrison, attack, and infantry. They have their strengths and weaknesses. You've heard me talk a lot about the garrison tree in other videos. I'll have a card up in the top if you want to check that out. If you are building Eulji Mundeok as a garrison commander, and he is good for that, I would recommend that you pick up all of these talents that live in the garrison tree, with the exception of the march speed. If you're using him to defend your city, and I would highly recommend getting Burning Blood, Lord of War, and if you think you're going to get rallied, you might really benefit from Effortless. Otherwise, you could be looking at Undying Fury or Call of the Pack as good skills to go and pick up. Now, if you're using this commander in open field combat, and you cannot field all infantry, then you're going to be looking at the attack tree as the primary place where you spend your points. In general, however, I would recommend that you instead run full infantry with this commander, and don't use him as the primary if you can't run full infantry or close to it. But if you had to use him as the primary, and again, I would use a commander that instead has the skill tree if you were in that situation, you would definitely want to pick up Burning Blood and Lord of War. You could also make your way over to Martial Mastery, assuming you've got a pairing here that's not focused on skill damage. I also would very rapidly make my way over to Undying Fury. I don't particularly like Victory Charge, because you've got to be defeating a lot of armies, and look, you're not doing crazy DPS. This is not the set of commanders that you're going to run that's going to defeat tons of armies, so I don't know, unless you are fielding higher tier troops than anybody else on the battlefield, I don't think this is all that exciting. I suppose you could make your way over to Last Stand, which could potentially be powerful if you're in the early game and you're using like an epic commander and a blue commander as a pairing. This is something you could do. Again, I would steer you towards commanders that have the skill tree. No, instead, I want to focus on how you build this guy as full infantry, if you have full infantry to get. And honestly, I think this is a pretty easy build to go and create. I would first make my way to Undying Fury if you're running full infantry, and rapidly making my way to the march speed increases that are available. March speed is really, really crucial. You can pick up Snare of Thorns, and that doesn't yet require full infantry, so I feel really good about that pickup, and I am loving the movement speed available on Fleet of Foot. If you can't tell, I'm really into movement speed. I would then make my way over to get Hold the Line, and at this is the point that you have to have full infantry to be getting full benefits. And lastly, I would be getting Elite Soldiers, which is elevating the attack, defense, and health of your infantry units. It's point for point a lot of efficiency in elevating the stats of your infantry. I also am a huge fan of Strong of Body. You're getting 2% of lift to stats per point that you're investing here, which is actually even better technically than Elite Soldiers. The only difference is that this is all in health. Now, something that's worth mentioning is when you have a tree that focuses on a specific type of unit, you generally get more benefit, but only for that type of unit. So you can see here, these middle points are offering an entire percentage of stat point, which is really good for a single talent point, but it's only for infantry. You can compare over here to the half a percentage point you would get to all types of troops. Now, you might consider waiting on Strong of Body and Fleet of Foot until you both have Elite Soldiers and potentially have Burning Blood, because I think Rage Restoration, Rage Generation, is absolutely essential in this game. I also think that Lord of War, which when troops led by this commander enter battle, you increase your attack by 0.5% times your commander's star level, and I believe that goes up to 1.5% per star level. Oh my goodness. As soon as you're starring up this commander past 4, the value here is insane. So I would be picking these up perhaps even before I get Fleet of Foot and Strong of Body, but those are really good to get, and it's worth mentioning, these points off to the side are pretty decent. You get a full percentage of stats for a single point. Honestly, after you've made your way to Lord of War and, maybe if you're considering Effortless, you've already got Effortless. Those are some good pickups. And let's just talk for a second about Fight to the Death, when you would get that, and Martial Mastery and when you would get that. So Fight to the Death makes it so that you increase all damage dealt by 2%, but also increases all damage taken by 1%. This is good if you're fighting a single army or if you're a part of a DPS unit. It makes you vulnerable, though. If you think you're going to get hit by multiple armies, then this is not the best talent to be picking up. Martial Mastery increases your normal attack damage, but decreases active skill damage. So if you're pairing this commander with, like, let's say, Sepia or Joan of Arc, commanders that don't do skill damage, then this is an interesting skill a different talent, an interesting talent to be looking at. So with all of that said, I generally think if you're using Eulji Mundeok as the primary, you're using him as an infantry commander in open field, or as a garrison commander to defend your city. And the way that you ultimately get these sculptures, thankfully, follows most of the usual places. You can get them from chests in the tavern, both silver and gold. Sometimes he rotates through the expedition and is available in that shop. And after you've unlocked this commander, you can use your universal sculptures to work on Eulji Mundeok. Now, with all of that said, who are the best pairings for Eulji Mundeok? And bear in mind, this is my opinion, and keep in mind, I'm not actively using this commander. I've only got him at level 1, so you can take these recommendations with a grain of salt. I don't want to pretend to be the absolute Grand Master of this commander. I'm not currently using him, and that is because I've prioritized other things. So with that said, who could you pair Eulji Mundeok with that I think would be really strong? And I want to start with other infantry commanders. Commanders like Richard I or Charles Martel are really interesting as pairings because they both are focused on infantry, and these commanders offer a tremendous amount of tankiness. In that case, you're probably using Eulji as the primary and these commanders as the secondary because legendaries are harder to level up. Another option if you're going the pure infantry commander route would be to pair with, and I swear I can find him, Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu is going to lift the skill damage that Eulji Mundeok is doing. He's going to add a lot of rage restoration and reduce damage taken. I love the pairing. I love the pairing actually quite a bit. So that is one option you could consider for open field combat. Now, it's worth mentioning that I'm assuming you're using these commanders not to battle barbarians because you should be using a peacekeeper as the primary in that case. So, if we get a look then at commanders that are just good generalists, there are some good generalist commanders you could pair with Eulji Mundeok that I think would be a great pairing. That includes Boudica as the primary, um, or as the secondary. She is decreasing the damage that enemies do. She's decreasing their rage. She's doing healing. She's increasing your rage. And she's not specific to a certain type of troop. I love everything about this pairing. I think it's doing a lot of really great stuff. Another option is Joan of Arc, and this is really good in open field combat in which there are other armies nearby that will benefit from the fact that you're offering this exceptional buff. You also have some healing and increase your normal attack damage. I think the pairing is totally fine. We also mentioned CPO previously. I think CPO is great because it elevates the tankiness of this unit, and you've heard me mention in many videos, if you see a CPO on the battlefield, just hit something else. Why bother? Because you make CPO stronger when you're hitting the CPO unit, and I think this pairing with Eulji Mundeok could be kind of interesting. You will be making a very resilient army that does a lot of additional damage when it's being attacked. You also have the increased troop capacity, which I think is totally on point with what you might be doing with Eulji Mundeok for that open field scenario. Now, if we move into the realm of garrison defense, I think you've got a lot of really interesting choices here, and really we're just talking about all of your standard garrison commanders. Most all of them have exceptional synergy. That includes Richard I, that includes Charles Martel, that includes, as a garrison pairing, you could do Kusunoki. We're talking about defending your city in this case, and you're going to have lots of different types of troops in your city, so it doesn't matter that this commander focuses on a different type of unit. You could pair with Pelagius or Sun Tzu. Even Hermann would be exceptional for defending your city. All of these pairings are great because they're doing a lot of the same sort of stuff here, elevating your ability to defend your city, and all of the skills are relevant on those commanders for those situations. Now, the other thing that you might kind of be looking at, and these are some stretch options, I think, for Eulji Mundeok, would of course be Julius Caesar, if you have him powered up. Many people do not, but if you did have Julius Caesar in a strong place, and I suppose I overlooked this commander for open field combat, he would be really good, actually. In that case, you're using Eulji as the primary and probably Julius as the secondary, because legendaries are harder to level up, and the higher level you are, the higher star level you are, the more troops you can field. I guess star level isn't directly related to troops, but level is. The other consideration that I should have mentioned for garrison defense is Yi Song-ye, and Yi Song-ye is a exceptional high damage garrison defender who, like, look, if you've got him, yeah, you're gonna do work defending your city. One other option for open field, and I suppose I keep overlooking these, would be Frederick I, and he is a generalist that I'm not currently using, but he's doing all the right things. He's making it so you deal extra damage. He's increasing the troop capacity. I like what's going on here for open field. I don't think Frederick is the strongest commander to pair with in this situation, but I think he's good. Now, if you have Minamoto in a really strong place, if you have Cao Cao in a really strong place, you could use these commanders, but there's some serious anti-synergy because they focus on cavalry. Eulji wants you to have infantry. Really because the expertise skill on Eulji is so focused on infantry, it's hard to say that I would really advocate for a pairing that involves a commander that cares about a different type of troop. So, my friends, I hope you found this video helpful. There's a lot to talk about with Eulji Mundeok because he's such an interesting commander. I really do value the defense reduction here, assuming that it means that all the army is hitting that enemy at the same time while the defense is down. We'll get to do extra damage. I think you're onto something hot here. If this video was helpful, please do let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe as a relatively new content creator. Man, that means a whole heck of a lot to me. And until next time, my friends, you have fun smashing the kingdom.